On April 9, 1940, German forces launched Operation Weserübung, which included, among its objectives, the invasion of Norway. In the early morning, German landing troops headed to 5 Norwegian cities simultaneously: Oslo, Kristiansand, Bergen, Trondheim, and Narvik. The Germans expected a swift victory, but things didn't work out the way they had planned. The Allied forces were not willing to cede Norway to the enemy. On the eve of the invasion, the Royal Navy was at sea. British ships were providing cover for a mining operation in Norwegian waters. On April 8, destroyer Glowworm heroically fell in battle against a superior German squadron. The next morning, battlecruiser Renown engaged battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, forcing them to retreat. The Norwegians themselves didn't want to give up without a fight either. A coastal fortress at the approach to Oslo unleashed its artillery and torpedo batteries to send the flagship of the invasion forces, new heavy cruiser Blücher, to the bottom. But it's here, off the coast of Oferfjord, also known as the Narvik Fjord, where the Kriegsmarine suffered the most painful losses in 2 battles, on April 10th and 13th. Invading this town came with considerable risks from the outset. German aviation couldn't reach these territories, meaning there was no possibility to cover the landing troops from above. Why would Germany want to take this small town, with a population of about 18,000, situated in the northern part of the Norwegian Sea, almost in the Arctic Ocean? Germany badly needed strategic raw materials for its war industry. Iron ore was provided by Sweden, but in winter, all Swedish ports in the Baltic were blocked by ice, and Narvik was the only year-round port that had a direct railway connection with Swedish deposits in the city of Kiruna. This is why a small town in the Arctic Circle became such an important strategic point. On April 9, 1940, the British 2nd Destroyer Flotilla, 5 ships in total, was ordered to head to Narvik's harbor. They were oblivious to the fact that they would be met by a force twice their size. In the early morning of April 10th, the flotilla stormed the harbor, having taken advantage of a thick fog. They fired torpedo salvos at the enemy, who had no idea an attack was coming. Then the artillery followed. 2 German destroyers burst into flames and sank right away. 3 others were badly damaged. One of the ships was flagship destroyer Wilhelm Heidkamp, carrying the German flotilla commander Friedrich Bonte. He was killed with his entire command staff. 8 cargo ships were also sunk by the British forces. On the way back, the British ships were intercepted by the surviving German destroyers, which had been hiding in the neighboring fjords. A fierce battle followed, in which 2 British ships were sunk, including the flagship. The surviving ships barely managed to break away from the fjords. The whole battle lasted 2 hours. The losses on each side were similar, and both sides lost their commanders. But the Germans were running out of fuel and ammunition, and most of their ships needed repairs, while the British were rallying more forces toward Narvik, and had already blocked the exits from the fjords. All the Kriegsmarine destroyers could do was wait for the end. 3 days later, the Royal Navy came to finish the job. On April 13, 1940, the Germans were confronted with an unusual sight. British battleship HMS Warspite, accompanied by 9 destroyers entering the fjord. The flag of Vice Admiral Whitworth was flying over the battleship, which was commanded by a recipient of the Victoria Cross, Captain Victor Crutchley. A shipboard aircraft took off from Warspite and detected a German ship hiding in a nearby bay. 3 British destroyers approached the location and spat artillery fire with hurricane-like ferocity at the enemy. The Germans tried to resist, but battleship Warspite, firing from a distance of 3 kilometers, literally tore the enemy destroyer to shreds. At the same time, a biplane launched from Warspite sank a U-boat detected in one of the fjords. The British moved further along the Oferfjord, engaging 5 enemy destroyers. The Germans actively maneuvered in desperation, hiding in a blizzard while delivering artillery fire and launching torpedoes. They were running out of ammunition. Erik Bay, who was in command of the destroyer flotilla, gave the order to retreat to Rombaksfjord. One of his ships, Hermann Kuna, didn't receive the signal and headed to Herjolfsfjord, pursued by British destroyer Eskimo. A blast soon erupted. Kuna broke in two, either hit by a torpedo or scuttled by her crew. During that time, German destroyer Erich Giese, hastily repaired after the previous battle, left Narvik's harbor and was headed straight for the British. She immediately came under concentrated fire. The ship only had enough ammunition to return fire for 10 minutes. After that, the crew abandoned her as she burned. Destroyer Cossack entered the harbor and was met by precise artillery fire from Dieter von Reuter, which remained stationary at the pier because of damage received in battle 3 days prior. But her shell fire was so accurate that Cossack slowed down and ran aground. Warspy joined the fight, but shooting at such a small target resulted in destroying the pier and port rather than the ship. Other British ships approached the motionless Dieter von Reuter, and the crew abandoned the doomed destroyer, having mined it first. 4 remaining German destroyers, shrouded in the cover of smoke, retreated to Rombaksfjord. The crew of 2 of them were making preparations to scuttle their ships. The other 2 had a few remaining torpedoes, and they were preparing to confront the British, having hunkered down in the narrowest part of the fjord. As soon as the British ships appeared in the strait, the Germans unleashed a torpedo salvo. One of the British destroyers, HMS Eskimo, was seriously damaged, losing her bow to a torpedo hit. Yet she survived and continued the fight. 2 of the German destroyers were blown up by their crew. Another one, seriously damaged, ended up at the mercy of the British, who finished it off with torpedoes. Another German ship ran aground and broke in 2. Germany lost 10 destroyers at Narvik, exactly half of the Kriegsmarine's destroyer strength. These naval battles were followed by 2 months of battles on land, and the town was recaptured from the Germans. But not for long. The Allies faced a series of severe defeats along the entire Western Front, and the Germans occupied Narvik again on June 9, 1940. This time, the occupation would last 5 long years.